Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesingrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesingrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Good. How are you, Tessa? Good to meet you.
I'm just trying to turn my phone off. I've literally turned off the Alexa, sent my partner out the house. And I thought,
yeah.
There we go.
Everything talks to you nowadays.
No, it did that during a radio interview the other day. Alexa suddenly announced the weather.
I don't have one of those. So
she's on zero volume.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very good.
Whereabouts are you?
Niagara Falls, New York.
Oh, marvellous. I haven't been to New York for a very long time.
Whereabouts in the UK are you?
So I'm in Lincolnshire, which is, if you imagine the map of England, you know, the bit that bumps out on the right-hand side. I'm kind of where the bump joins back in. So,
okay.
In the east, in the flatlands of the east.
I have been there 3 different times. Was in London, of course. We were in Chingford. We were in Birmingham. We were in Stratford.
Okay.
Devon.
Oh, Devon's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah, I spent my grandmother lived there, so I spent all my childhood holidays. We used to go down to Devon. I love Devon. Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it is beautiful. So good to have you. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited.
Thank you. We are rolling, so we just go right into it. It's just casual conversation about who you are, what you do, and why you're doing it, and everything else. So, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, we'd love to hear.
Sure. So I'm Tess, and I'm the founder of a company here in the UK called This Was Them, and which essentially is all about collecting memories of somebody that's passed away so that we can preserve memories so that somebody isn't forgotten. And the main driver for that is that I lost my dad when I was very, very young. So I was 16 months old when my dad passed away. He was only 21. My mum was a 19-year-old widow all of a sudden. And really, it's about those experiences that I had as a child and that carried on through my teenage years into my 20s that led me to a place where I wanted to do something to help children, young adults that are experiencing a similar version of grief.
Mm-hmm. Did you Do you feel that your mother did a good job in keeping his legacy alive for you?
To be fair, my dad died in 1969, and in those days, all the help she received was just soldier on, just carry on, just keep going.
Mm,
And that was the extent of it. Counselling didn't exist, and counselling for specific entities like childhood bereavement just did not exist in those days. And it was the good British stiff upper lip, and we just soldiered on. So my mum remarried a few years after my dad passed away, and the wonderful man that she remarried insisted on adopting me because he wanted me to have the same name as the family and the family that were to come. My brother was born a few years later. So I do count myself as very, very lucky and very blessed that I actually had a very supportive family around me. But with the specifics in mind of was I supported in my grief? No, I wasn't. But that was nobody's fault. I don't see any fault with my parents or anything like that. It's just that's just not what happened in those early
hmm
years of the 70s.
Yeah, I am intrigued by your story, and I'm anxious to share it with my niece.
Oh,
My niece Jamie, who was just a young child when her dad passed away in a car accident,
same as
and
mine. Yeah.
yeah, and so I love that this is a new, I guess, approach, not approach, but situation that is addressed in this, what we call a grief space,
Mm,
that for those who may not have actually known their parent and then have to go through life with all the steps and everything that they encounter with it.
mm.
So the support wasn't there early on. What came about in you as you were progressing through your younger years and in wondering interest? Did that kind of thing happen for
Hmm.
you where it started developing?
Yes. So the only advice my mum was ever actually given was to tell me as young as possible what had happened, not keep it a secret till I was 16 and then hit me with this whammy. So I grew up always knowing that my dad, John, had passed away and that he had loved me very much. So I always grew up with this shadowy idea that a tragedy had happened, but I wasn't really aware of it. Um, but I also grew up feeling slightly strange. But being young, you don't have the vocabulary to verbalize that. But what I realize now is that uh, I missed somebody that I didn't know. I loved somebody that I had no memory of, and that sets you apart. It makes you feel. For me, it made me feel I was very different, and that there was a strangeness around me that I couldn't put my finger on. Now, the form of grief now. I mean, I was labelled very early on. I was labelled a naughty child and a bit of a disruptive child. I attended Sunday school once and once only, and when my mum came to collect me, they very politely asked that I not be brought back next week. Um, which alternated with I was actually very shy as well. I was very nervous around new people and new situations. Um, I had dreadful sleep issues. I think I was probably 12 or 13 before I stopped climbing into bed with my mum every night. I couldn't sleep a whole night on my own. Um, awful, awful separation anxiety with my mum. I vividly remember being taken to nursery school and having to be prized off my mum as she would leave me, and various other instances through my life where being away from my mum and the man I call dad, who was my mum's second husband, I call him dad. He is my dad. He walked me down the aisle.
hmm
He is my dad. But whenever they would go away, even if it was for a wedding or something, I would get incredibly anxious that they weren't going to come back. These are really common bereavement
mm
signals. But we didn't know that then. I kind of got labeled the naughty child. But I just didn't really know where my place was in the world, I think is how I would say that now. And if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, you're not weird. You're just grieving. That's all it
Yeah.
is. It's grief. I, as I went into my teenage years, I think the disruptive, angry element in me started to really come out. I would have very violent outbursts at home. So it became quite uncontrollable. Again, I remember probably when I was about 10 or 11, my mum in desperation taking me to see the doctor, who basically told me off, told me to stop being so naughty.
Hmm.
Again, I will always keep saying this, there was no help available. And that vein in my life continued really through my 20s and into my late 20s and early 30s. I think it was in my early 30s where actually it was a workplace situation where I had let my anger get control of me one time too many, and my boss at the time said, if you don't get some help, we're going to have to let you go because this is not acceptable behaviour. So I very begrudgingly went to anger management counselling. And within the first 2 minutes, my counsellor said, you don't need anger management, you need grief counselling.
Wow.
And
That's very, very
it
observant. Yeah.
was a shattering but brilliant moment in my life, because I can remember sitting there saying, but he died 30 years ago. I didn't know him. And she said, so you think you don't grieve because you don't remember? And it was the word, I just remember the air leaving my lungs. It was shattering that somebody would say this. She then ended the session really quickly and said, I'm an anger management counsellor. This is not my specialty. I'm going to redirect you to grief counselling. I duly turned up at my first grief counselling session full of trepidation. And within 15 minutes, I felt like the sun had come out on a very cloudy day. It changed my life. That 1 hour session changed my life, because suddenly I realised that I was grieving. I didn't know how to grieve because I didn't know the person. And in my mind, well, because I didn't know him means I had no right to grieve him, which was completely
Mm.
wrong. I had every
Right.
right to grieve him. And that was a real pivotal moment in my life. I was able
How,
to put it down.
yeah, how fortunate to have a good grief counselor too,
Yeah,
because it could just be a regular therapist and maybe they didn't have the background and everything.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I
your
remember,
story, oh, I'm sorry. Your story is resonating very strongly with me. My son was 27 years old and he had his son when he was 16. And so my son, unfortunately, did not have a part in his life very much. And when my son passed, my grandson wanted to come to the funeral, even though he didn't know his dad really. And he did. And he was 11 years old. And so he and I now have a relationship.
fantastic.
And so I often wondered, and looked, because it's so unique of a circumstance, that when you talk to child specialists and grief specialists, and a lot of times they don't have that particular circumstance to draw upon. So I have really looked for, and I'm sure we were connected for this reason, for
I think
someone
so
who has
too.
experienced such a thing, so that so many of the things that you said make so much sense. And I often wondered how I can address this with him effectively, and I think it's interesting because you look at now a 13-year-old, and 13-year-old boys will be 13-year-old boys, and they
Mm-hmm.
do the things they do, and you wonder if it's an outpouring of
Mm,
something you can't explain, or it's just
yes.
being him. And so just look for effective ways of speaking to him about it. He is pretty open at times. If you do it in short bursts, you don't get
Yep.
very heavy with it. But I've been very intrigued by his willingness to talk about things at times. So, perhaps we can get more into that at some time. And I appreciate you sharing that, because, it's just want to do best for him where
Absolutely. Of
he's
course.
at.
I think this really sort of dovetails into why I started my business, because the counselling really helped me with my grief. That was one package. How to grieve, understanding that I needed to grieve. That was a huge acceptance for me, to understand that, one, I needed to, and two, it was okay to. So I then, in my 30s, went through a grief period where I grieved somebody. Um, the second half of that is the understanding the power of memories, because this is what made my situation slightly unusual, was that I had friends who had lost a parent. I vividly remember a school friend, probably when I was 8 or 9, and his mum passing away, and us being told at school, "Oh, Mark's mummy died the other day." And I can remember feeling jealous because in my head it was like, well, you've got 8 years of memories. You've got 8 birthdays with her. You can remember
Yeah.
her smile and her laugh and how she looked after you and how she loved you. I have none of those memories. And this is what I think is so important for those of us that were young enough or too young to have memories of their own, is the power and the importance of sharing memories and stories. And that comes from that. The onus of that does not lie with the remaining parent. It belongs to everybody who knew and loved that person: grandparents, friends, work colleagues, friends, associates. You all, I often liken this to like going into a library. When you think about your son, you go into a library, and that library is filled with columns of books and rows of books. And you can walk down any aisle in that library and pull out a book and open that book and be immersed in everything in that book. A child walks into their library and there's a pamphlet. That's all that's
Mm.
in there. You can be a lending library. You can lend them that book of memories, and you do that just by talking about them or writing them down. But it's the act of sharing memories that adds books to that child's library and enriches their library for them. And I think it's a really powerful thing to do because it is the smallest details. When you don't have any memories, you suck up everything that you're given because you have no memories. So even things like, I was very lucky that I was, during COVID, a gentleman reached out to me on Facebook. We had the full pandemic here in the UK, full lockdown. Guy reached out to me on Facebook and said, "Hello, I'm your Uncle Andy." Oh, I knew my dad had
Hmm.
a fair big family, but we didn't have any connection with them. And he reached out to me as my uncle. We connected on Facebook, and then he just started talking to me and showing me pictures that I'd never seen before. I only had one photo of my dad holding me, and that's it. Um,
Mm.
and the stories that he told me were tiny. They were just little, but they were lots of stories about his childhood that I would have heard from my dad. He would have told me these things eventually, but to hear just these minute details, I've always likened it to, it's like having a slightly out of focus black and white photograph, and somebody brings that focus back and adds colour into this photograph. So now the photo starts to really jump off the page. That's what it's like when someone tells you stories and memories. And that's what I would urge anyone to do, is share what you remember with the person that is lacking in memories.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And oh, you reminded me now talking about the things coming alive. Now with AI, they're doing that. And it's my brother did a photo. My father passed when I was 10 in 1972. And so there's a photo of him, and it was his birthday, and he sent the text out to us, and he made it like pull up a heart and smile and say, missing you all, or something like that. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa.
I did that with a
Astounding.
photo. I've got one photo of me and my dad, and I did the AI thing with this photo of my dad, and in it he turns and holds me up, and where I bawled like a baby, because
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
it's for children now in this era. We have a million photos. Everybody owns a million things on their phone, video clips and photos. But this is 1969. There's one photograph of me and my dad in existence in the whole world. And to see that photo move blew my mind because
Yeah.
I'd never seen him do that. I have no idea what his voice sounded like at all.
Mm,
And there is no recording. So yeah, the AI thing is, it's incredible. I'm not sure it's always going to be for the power of good.
right.
I think you could latch on to something like that in your grief and maybe find it hard to move on. I don't know. I don't know.
My niece did it too, the one I talked about who lost
Mm.
her dad in a car accident, and she got married, and she's kept his legacy alive fantastically. And so she had a picture, I guess two different pictures, one of her in a wedding dress and him. Um, I don't know what the circumstances were, but she made it so that they hugged each other.
Oh,
It was tremendous. It was so beautiful.
oh, it's so lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think AI is something, like anything, there's a power of good and a power of bad, but I do think it must be wonderful to be able to do that. I only have one photograph, and because of the way the picture is, there's limited things that I can do. But
Hmm.
just having that photo move sometimes is amazing. I do still go back and look at it quite often, I have to say, especially when I'm
Uh,
struggling with myself sometimes.
so you progressed through,
Through the counselling.
you moved on to
Mm.
doing things to keep legacies alive for people. And
Yeah, I think once I'd started a conversation with my new uncle, my Uncle Andy, and then I was very lucky to go and meet him as well and have an amazing afternoon of photos and memories of their childhood. Um, and one of the things that counselling taught me was to always try to look inwards. I like to do a little health check. I do a little scan. How am I feeling today? Am I feeling happy? Why? Am I feeling sad? Why? I try to be very mindful of how I feel. And after meeting him and hearing some stories, I did my little health scan, and it was kind of, how do I feel? And it was like, I feel happy. When I think about my dad now, I don't feel that little drag of loss or regret. I actually feel a little bubble of happiness and joy. And I had a moment of clarity on a walk on a beautiful lake near my house, that if I feel like this, then so would other children and young adults who've experienced a similar loss when they're young. And I thought, well, if I'm the expert, because I am the child and the young adult and now the much older lady who lost a parent, I know how that feels. I speak from a position of experience. So if I feel like that, so will other people. Knowing memories and stories will make them feel a little happier, maybe not straight away, but at some point. And really, that was the germ of the idea for my business, that collecting memories and preserving them is really, really important. I'd worked in publishing for quite a long time in the autobiographical sector. And really, I just took all my knowledge of how that industry works and devised a process where I can help people by collecting their memories and turning them into a book, which is then given to the bereaved child. So I started the business 2 years ago. It's getting there. Yeah, it's doing really well. It's been very well received by the major charities here in the UK, and I've been working with a number of families who've experienced loss in different ways, whether that's through illness, accident, suicide. Um, the core of it is that there are children out there now who own a book, and when they open that book, there's mummy or there's daddy. And I love the idea that there's a child out there maybe who's feeling a bit sad, and under their pillow is this book, and they can pull it out and read about mummy and look at photographs of mummy and daddy and just feel a little bit of a connection.
Mm. You know, is the book age specific, or
I
could be
try
any
not to,
age? Or?
yeah, I try not to create it too much a specific, purely because the child is going to become an adult. And what I don't want is a book that I write for, say, a 6-year-old, and 5 or 6 years later, that young teenager feels that book's too babyish for them.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the language very simple so that it is something they will continue to return to. So yeah, I try not to, purely for that reason.
Oh, I thank you too, because you're helping me right now, because I know that even myself with my grandson, I don't know, maybe it's in the States here. I don't know if it's the same there, but there's always this caution, it seems, to,
Hmm.
oh, be careful what you say around them or
Yep,
whatever. And you're making it seem more that we should open that up, and
absolutely.
that we should allow them to experience
You have to
their
acknowledge
parents.
that the grief is real. It exists. Whether we address it and deal with it now, or it's something that gets held off to later in life. The harsh reality is that they are suffering a loss. And I'm a great believer that the language we use should be very honest. One of my bugbears that I often have with my clients that they struggle with slightly is around the language we use. So, for example, um, we say things like, "Oh, we lost them," or "they fell asleep." they've gone to a better place. That's so confusing as a child.
Yeah.
I believe that I was told my dad fell asleep, and that's possibly why I had such issues with sleep. I was so scared to go to sleep and so scared for mum to go to sleep because she might not come back either. But we say things like, "Oh, they've gone to a better place." Well, where's that better place, and why can't I go there, and why can't they come back from there?
Right.
We do.
Why aren't I part of that?
What's so much better than me? So
Right.
where is better than me? So we do have to be, I do believe we have to be very honest around our language and expect questions. But one of the key points I think with that is, in my experience, because everybody else seemed to be carrying on, I found it incredibly difficult to ask questions and start conversations. And my mum will now say that because I didn't ask questions, she assumed I was okay, so didn't offer any.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a self-eating snake, as it were, that was eating itself up. I didn't ask, so nobody offered any information. It's very hard to ask a question when you don't really understand the language around the situation anyway. So yes, I think your take on that is right, Tom. You should offer information. You need to show the door is open to conversation. All they then have to do is nudge the door open, as opposed to bang on the door and try and find the lock. All you've got to do is keep the door open and make sure they know that. And I think the more you talk, the easier it becomes for everybody involved.
Hello, friends. I just wanted to take a brief break here in the podcast to make you aware of a very exciting partnership that Heroes in Grief has just formed, and that is with Get Griefy Magazine. I'm going to let their founder and editor-in-chief, Kara Sanchez, tell you all about it.
Hey, Heroes in Grief listeners. Life after loss isn't easy, but it can be colorful and full of possibilities. Meet Get Griefy Magazine, a vibrant resource filled with inspiring stories of life after loss, expert advice, and voices from everyday grievers and thought leaders. Together, they're here to help guide you toward the side of life that's left to be lived fully and authentically. Dive into Get Griefy for free on Issue or snag a print copy on Amazon. Connect with us on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine or visit getgriefymagazine.com to explore, join our thriving small business collective, or discover advertising opportunities. Let's embrace life after loss, boldly and together.
And now back to our episode. And I would expect too that depending on the age of the child, that it's appropriate for their age.
Absolutely.
Because circumstances surrounding the death or something, maybe something not to share at a younger age than when
Absolutely.
they're able to accept that or receive that, I should say.
Yes, absolutely. I've done a number of projects, sadly, that where we've lost a parent to suicide, and that's a whole different ballgame. You know, there is people are more scared of that than anything else, I think, of saying the wrong thing. And also, when I lost two very close friends to suicide, and you do go through a period of anger, misunderstanding, then you feel sad for them. I've gone through all of those emotions with my two friends, and to then project that onto a child as well. Every situation is different, and they have to be handled how the family feel most comfortable with. But I think it's just important to always bear in mind, don't be scared to talk about them, and don't be scared to accept that they have gone, and then they're no longer with us. And keep the
Do you get to be part of their receiving of this? Like you help the parent to develop the story in the book, and then do they follow up with you and allow you to be part of the child receiving
I leave it
that?
up to them. I always say I am the facilitator of this project. It's my job to get it from concept to book, and I leave it up to them. I've never been there when children have been gifted their books, but I have. I had a number of projects that were finished at the end of last year for Christmas presents. And on Boxing Day, my inbox was a flurry of really lovely photos of children of varying ages opening these books and then ignoring all the other presents while they sat surrounded by wrapping paper and the detritus of Christmas Day, just avidly reading their book. And that really warmed my heart on Boxing Day that we have here in the UK, which is a very important day. But that was really lovely, and I was really grateful to be part of that. But I feel I feel like my role is to add a layer to the healing process, but not to be part of the healing process. So I'm there to give them something. I have had a project, for example, where the decision was made that the children are too young at the moment to have this book. So they will get the books later in life. In that particular situation, the young mum had decided that she needed to leave us of her will. And so I think for them, they're still dealing with the suicide and the concept of why she would do that. And maybe the book is too soon for them. But it's there. It's sitting there wrapped up, waiting for them. And one day they will get their books when the time is right. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you got to experience that, though. It's so rewarding. That must be amazing
It makes me feel very humble to know that children who I understand what they're going through, to know that there's a little light at the end of the tunnel, or a little gem for them to hold on to, and that I was part of that, makes everything I do worthwhile. I'm very humbled by how these friends and family let me into a part of their life that is painful and hard to visit, but they let me in, and I hold their hand, and we go to that place and enjoy that
Yeah,
place
what an
together.
honor. That is an
It is
honor.
an
Yeah.
absolute honor. I'm always very sad at the end of a project, because I have to say goodbye not only to the person and the family I've been working with, but also the person that's passed away, because I get to know them really, really well. And every now and then I'll have somebody, a subject of a book will be somebody whose life really is in alignment with mine, maybe a similar age to myself or similar part of the world, and I feel like I've really known them, and then I have to close that file down and move on. And yeah.
I just wiped. I'm tearing here. I'm beautiful tears.
I'm sorry. It's
Honestly,
not
because
uncommon for people to cry when they're talking to me, but hopefully it's usually happy tears.
it is. It just touches me because of my situation, and this
Yeah.
is so
You
amazing.
understand
I
it.
I will tell you that this morning, right here it's morning, and I got up and they've got me on this medication, anti-inflammatory that I hate taking, these over-the-counter meds, but it's a prescription amount, and so I feel horrible. I'm just
Sorry.
feeling crappy. I got to take it for 2 more days. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's why I messaged you early. I'm like, well, if you can get it done early, I'm going to nap after or whatever. And it's a
Yeah.
beautiful day here. I don't want to spend the day doing that. But so, and this always happens, this type of thing where, this occurrence here, this is synchronistic for sure. And, it happens with me. I'm a performer. I perform in care centers during the daytimes. And,
Oh, wow.
the occurrence happened one time where I was, frustrated about having to go like 2:00 in the afternoon. And I get there and this beautiful woman comes up to me at the end crying, and she's in her 90s, and how much it touched her. And I was like, what a fool you are. And I never felt that way again after that,
Good for
because,
you.
but yeah, you keep pushing through and these amazing things happen. And I'm so happy for this conversation. Let me tell you,
Good.
it's going to be very applicable for me. And I love that illustration of the library. That is gorgeous. And,
Yeah, I think
maybe,
it's a great analogy for people. I work with so many people, and when I talk about my business and what I do, you can see people, you can see it clicking in their head. Oh yeah, of course, they don't know that about them. And it just always amazes me, because to me it's blindingly obvious. And I have to really drum it home sometimes, but people always get it. And I think they
yeah,
always find it quite shocking that it's so simple. It's such a simple concept. It's just about sharing memories. But of course, in modern life as well, a parent will go out to work, especially if they commute. There's every chance that they've got a whole circle of friends, work friends, that know of their children, but they don't know their children, but they know that they've got 2 kids and that the kids are playing judo and football, but they don't know them. So when that parent passes away, that connection is physically broken now. There is no way for that work colleague to pass on those memories. So we have to go out and we have to seek them. I always say to my clients, think about who you want me to interview for this book, because it's not just the surviving parent, grandparents. It's the wider circle and then the even wider circle, because we all hold memories in our heads, and that's what we have to capture. I always think I love an analogy. I always say, we go to a funeral and the service is sad. There's a coffin and it's heartbreaking and we have somber music, or we might have joyful music. After that, we go to the wake, and invariably at a wake, 15, 20 minutes in, somebody will tell a little story and somebody will giggle, and then somebody else will tell another story and somebody will say, oh, I never knew they used to do that. And you start swapping with. My business is a big butterfly net at the wake. That's what I do. I capture all those little things that start to bubble up at that moment. The things that you think about when you remember your person. When we lose somebody, I think it's really easy to get caught. If we think of life as a timeline in linear terms, it's very hard. It's very easy, sometimes to look back and get caught at the moment we lost them, because that's where our grief started, and it's very hard to bash past that. But what we do here at This Was Them is I give you a helping hand over the grief and go back to that lovely sunny bit before. Why you love them, why they made you laugh, why you miss them, what you think about when you think about them. And that's a really lovely place to go and visit. Not get past the grief, go back to that sunny field where they are and play around in that field of memories for a little while. I have so many clients who come back to me and say, I was really nervous about doing the interview, but actually I really enjoyed thinking about them again and reliving some of our childhood pranks and things we got up to in our teenagers. I really enjoyed remembering the person, not the loss, because that's what I do. I'm not focusing on the loss. I'm focusing on why you cared about them.
Tessa, you are motivating me like you wouldn't believe. I am.
Great.
My son, we were estranged for 5 years, and then he came to us to get out of some of the lifestyle he was in. So he lived with us the last 2.5 years, and it was treasured time. Of course, I spent with him almost every single day, talking with him in the living room after work or before work, and just beautiful. And so Jeff was not a person for photos. There's not many pictures of him or video. I don't have voice messages from him. It was always texting. And so, some of those things are absent. And so I struggled sometimes thinking about, creating that legacy portion. But as you talk and I sit there and think, his workplace, they loved him there.
There you go.
He was a contractor and he was very good at what he did, well liked there, and they were devastated. And so those people are still available. And I'm thinking now, my creativity is flowing and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to contact these people and I just want them just do a video, just talk about him and occurrences and things, and be able to get that for my grandson and everything, and myself too.
It provides, I always say that we're very, human beings, we're multifaceted. We're different things to different people. And I think it's to gather memories from just immediate family is really only showing one or two facets. You don't know the professional side of your son's life. You don't know how his work impacted others. That's somebody else's facet to give to you. And that's what you do when you go out into the world and you say, tell me about them. You capture more facets of that person and the whole being that they were, because we mean different things to different people. Whether it's professional or work life or just the neighbour down the street, and the more memories you gather, the better rounded picture you get. And there is really something magical about creating a book. I'm often asked, why don't you create a digital version? I mean, I work in a digital world. I conduct all my interviews over Zoom, etc., etc. I don't meet my clients face to face. They're all over the world. But there is something special about a book a physical book that sits on the table or the nightstand that you can pick up and just open at any page and dive into that place where they're existing. I think a digital version, I mean, for me, for children, I mean, the main thing is children need permission to access the internet of a certain age. A 6-year-old is not going to be allowed to surf online at midnight. But if they wake up at midnight feeling tearful, they can get their book and crawl under the covers with a torch and read it. So there is something really magical about taking the memories and creating something really physical. And I think it's a really positive thing for you to undertake as well, because you're actually creating something in their memory that will serve not just you. But what's interesting is the amount of people will come back and say, well, can I have a copy too? Because I want to read about my friends, what other people said. So invariably in nearly every project I complete, everybody who was involved has a copy of the book, buys a copy of the book, because they want to read the other stories as well.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about the digital age, and I think that it's so desensitized too. So they're engaged in that all the time, young people, and so it wouldn't have the same effect, as
No, it
it's just
doesn't.
another thing out there. Maybe not to
It's
stir
too
the
easy
emotions.
and I think, I mean, I struggle even with Audible. I'm constantly falling asleep and then I can't remember where I was up to and I'm having to backtrack. I've been listening to Michelle Obama's book for about 3 years now. I still can't get to the end because I keep falling in, because she's got such a beautiful voice. It just sends me to sleep. But it's not the same as holding a book. And I think that could be said not just for children. I think it's for adults as well. There's something very cathartic about picking up a book. And the thing with the book is you can literally let it fall open at any page and just pick it up and read it. And you don't do that with a PDF or a download or a YouTube video. It has to be tangible, I think.
Yeah. You kicked me in the ass too with thinking about Jeff's friend that he had when we were estranged, actually. And he went back and visited her once, when he came here, but then I think he just realized that it's not a good scene for him to be in there. But they were very close, and my daughter talks about her too, knowing her. And I thought about contacting her at one time and just saying, "Can you tell me some things?" And I hadn't done that.
Excuse.
So,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
That's
I'm
the
going
thing
to
is
now.
everybody, and the thing is, this is the thing with modern life as well, is we move and commute a lot more than we ever used to any time in the past. And so I would say that friendship bonds, for example, that are really strong at one point, 10 years down the line, someone got a great job, they moved cross country, they fell in love with a girl and settled. I have so many friends who went to work in America and never came home. Same in Australia, just because life took them to different places. And so that instant connection is now gone. And so those friendship bonds can move so easily and you lose touch with people. I was so grateful that my Uncle Andy made that effort to reach out to me. He actually also introduced me to my dad's best friend. He's now 80. And I had an afternoon with him, a very scary gentleman with tattoos and a cigarette who just sat in the corner. But I'm not sure who had more fun that afternoon, me listening or him recounting. And I would never have been able to meet this guy. I didn't know he existed. But that one afternoon was incredible. He didn't tell me anything earth-shattering. There was no hidden treasure or anything like that. It was just normal stories about what little boy, they were friends from when they were 5. So it was just stories of climbing trees and making slingshots and annoying girls and things like that. But I loved it. They were tiny memories, but they just all added up into this picture that is my
Yeah, and
dad.
obviously they were meaningful for him. Those are the things that, the formative years where you remember certain things, and they just get imprinted in your mind. And those are important and special. And so
Yeah, and even
part of
down
that
to,
person.
without it being too macabre, well, because my dad died in a very tragic way, people really touches on what you said earlier, Tom. People really shy away from talking about it because it was such a tragedy. I mean, it really rocked our town. Essentially, my dad went out one evening. The boys were going into the next town down the road, and on the way back, they drove into very thick fog. And it's not really sure exactly what happened, but my dad's car ended up on the wrong side of the road, parked on the wrong side of the road. We think he was completely disorientated. And another car came around a blind corner and drove into him. He was killed instantly. And he had two best friends. One of them was in the car with him. So the town lost two young men that night. And the third young man was late to meet them, and they went without him. And he's the 80-year-old gentleman that I met recently.
Wow.
So he's the guy that should have been in the car and wasn't in the car that night. And he said to me, and he told me about the accident in more detail than anybody else had. And although some might view it as a little macabre, I actually found a bit of comfort in the detail, just knowing a little bit more about that foggy, wrong word, but foggy area of my memories. And he said to me, I was so angry that they went without me. I had the real hump, and I harumphed home, and I went home early. And when I got up in the morning, I heard what had happened. And he lost his two best friends. And I think he probably has suffered from a little bit of survivor guilt because he should have been there, but he wasn't. And so I think we kind of reassured each other that afternoon. He was great fun. And I remember thinking, because I didn't speak to my mum, and she said, oh my God, those two were thick as thieves. They were like that as kids. They were always getting into trouble. They were the two little naughty boys who were just giggling in the corner. But what that enabled me to do as well was look at him and think, you must be a bit like my dad, because you were so close and so similar that his sense of humour must have, at the very least, tickled my dad, because that's where you connect with people, isn't it? And I really enjoyed even that. And one of the loveliest things was I walked into the room, and the first thing he said was, oh my God, you've got your dad's eyes. No one's ever given me a physical attribute that belonged to him.
Oh, that must have felt so great.
Oh, so special, because I am the spitting image of my mum. Anybody who meets two of us goes, oh, straight away, we're the spitting image of each other. But for somebody to say, oh my God, you've got your dad's eyes, what a funny little thing. But it was like another little string that connected me straight back to my dad. Was I have a genetic attribute that belonged to him. I'm very proud.
You mentioned something that I was wondering too, is when you're gathering the stories, what about not so positive things?
I do have a couple of rules. At the end of the day, I'm the editor of these stories, and I have my editor's red pen at the ready. So I won't include stories of excessive drinking, drug taking, things like that. But I try to be rounded. But also, I can only work with what people have told me. So essentially, I do a 1-hour interview with somebody, and they tell me their memories. I then shape those to sound good on a page. Majority of the time, they're not going to tell me about negativity. They tell me about joyful situations, funny situations, close scrapes, things like that. So I don't generally hear a lot of negativity.
How do you feel as a survivor about negative things, like the whole rounded picture, I should say?
I think it's one of the things that people, if we're going on the ladder of things people feel uncomfortable with, we start with talking about the fact that someone's dead and talking about them. And I think talking about the negativity side of things, people find that really, really hard, because there is that saying, don't speak ill of the dead. So people, I think, find that really hard to discuss. I had a friend of mine, her husband, I'd known him for a long time. I didn't realise that he'd lost his dad, similar age to me. And when I was talking to him about business, he said, it's interesting. He said, all I was ever told was, your dad was a good man. And he said, no, I just wanted to say, well, he can't have always been good. There must have been times when he, wasn't always pleasant. But I think that's another hurdle that people really struggle with. And it's not something I've come up against.
Do you feel you want to know? You would want to know?
Well, I still have a very quick temper, which apparently was one of my dad's traits. Even now, I'm now the grand age old of 57, and my mum is now 75. My mum will say, if I do get upset about something very quickly, my mum will still say, "Oh, you're so like your father," and I quite like it. And then I can brush that off and go, "It's not me, it's him." That's his
How
story.
wonderful for her to still embrace that too. That's
Yeah.
nice.
It's interesting starting this business. I've done a lot of, I've had some wonderful PR coverage here in the UK. I've done interviews with the BBC, lots of big national magazines. And so the story keeps popping up and popping up and popping up. And it's actually opened up a conversation between me and my mum, even better than it ever has been. So an offshoot of the business is that I think mum and I are even closer on this subject now. She's always been very open, but equally was trying to put her own life together. I'm very mindful. She was 19 years old and a widow. And I have the utmost respect for her, woman to woman, that she kept us together. She kept the family moving forward. She was able to find a wonderful man to marry and have my brother and create a new family unit for us where we all felt equal. So I have the utmost respect for her as a woman.
Has she gleaned anything from what you've done in her own grieving process?
I don't think so, no. I think, to be fair, I think my mum is that British generation of stiff upper lip who just move on. And actually, I think my mum's very grateful for how her life has turned out. She's had a wonderful life with my dad, my second father, and my brother, and she's very grateful for everything she has. That's something I've learned from her as well. I think that's possibly something we both took from loss, is we're both very mindful of where we are now and what we have, and be grateful for what we have. The past is the past, and we can't let it drag us down. So yeah, she's an incredible lady.
Awesome.
Very proud of her.
Tessa, amazing. I did not expect this right now, I'll tell you. But I always ask this because I want you to tell your things and what you're doing. Is there anything that we didn't maybe touch on that you'd like to talk about?
I think, just as a sort of, I suppose, a final overview is to remind people that, or highlight to people that memories are really important and really powerful. For, I guess, I would say that to a child who is bereaved, you will be okay. You're not weird. It's not strange to miss or love or want to know more about somebody that's left you. Ask the questions. Don't be too scared. To a parent, I would say, or caregiver, I would say, you don't have all the answers, but what you do know about that person is so important, and that you need to share all of that. Say their name, keep that door open, let the conversation be started. And the same to family, friends, and work colleagues. Even if you only knew them Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, what you have is valuable, and share them. And don't assume that it's somebody else's job to do and somebody else's place to ask the questions. You've got the memories. Gift them. Gift your memories to these people. That's really why my business exists. Anybody could do what I do to a degree. It's just about gather the memories, ask the questions with yourself, go and talk to your son's friends, go and talk to your son's work colleagues, ask them about him. And you know what? You're giving them a present as well, because you're saying to them, let's go back to that golden meadow and talk about my boy. I want to go back to that sunny pasture, and let's sit down in the grass there and have a chat about why you still miss him and what you think about him. You're giving them an opportunity to enjoy a moment thinking about him. And then in return, you're going to get memories. And I would urge everybody to do that. Talk about the person. Share the stories, share the memories, preserve them in whatever way works for you. I would always say go for a printed book, but if just writing them down on your computer is enough, or creating a short video, do something that preserves the memories, because then those memories are with you for the rest of your life.
Nothing more needs to be said than that. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Tom.
Everybody, Tessa Marshall, her site link will be in the show notes, of course. So thank you, Tessa, for the time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.